Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of the Americans for Prosperity Tennessee Legislative Update. It is March 18th, right on the dot, 6 p.m. Central Time. That's 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We're broadcasting all over the state. We're broadcasting all over the nation. And David Thompson, dare I say, we're broadcasting all over the world? I think we are. We're across a couple platforms right now. You may find us on Facebook. It's probably where most of you are watching right now. If you do have the pleasure of stumbling upon this program for the very first time, maybe you clicked a hashtag, or maybe you're just checking out Americans for Prosperity Tennessee for the first time. What this program is exactly like it says in the title. It's just a quick legislative update of things that are going on at the federal level and a few things that are going on at the state level. We're going to take a deep dive into most of those issues and provide all of you with ways to take action immediately to impact your community, make changes in this legislation, and reach out to your legislators. But I would like it to become a little bit more than just that. I'd like this to be a community-driven dialogue, something where, if we can even do it, reach through this screen to create a digital family, a little political family that lives on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch or wherever you still happen to be watching this. Reach out to us. Give us comments. Let your comments drive this program. Send us messages afterwards. And if you're commenting on any one of these platforms, if it's YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook, we can see these comments. And I really do mean that. I want all of you to be a part of this content creation. Let us know your opinions. Let us know what you'd like to focus on and drive where you'd like this program to go. With that being said, let's introduce around the horn, if you will, because we have a full stack team today. Let's bring on the person that you have not met yet. And let me do a little fun icebreaker game here to put James Amundsen on the spot, our deputy director. James, if you could introduce yourself to our new audience here. And then secondly, what's your dream bill? What would you like to see change? What's one piece of policy that, if passed, would satisfy your mind?
Well, first of all, James Amundsen. I am the Deputy State Director for Americans for Prosperity here in Tennessee. I just came back to work, so to speak, just a couple of days ago, celebrating the birth of my second son, little Bear Thyson. He was born on February 16th, so I got a few weeks to enjoy him at the house. And I've just come back to work here, like I said, earlier this week. And I have been enjoying being back in the thick of things, so to speak. And since you bring up policy, Grant, I'll be honest with you, healthcare has always been a passion of mine, and we've been working for the last, it's going on 2 years now, certificate of need reform here in Tennessee. There was a bill that was being worked in 2019. It came before the legislature last year. Coronavirus kind of put the brakes on a lot of good legislation that was moving through both chambers last year. But certainly would like to see certificate of need reforms passed this year. And if I had a magic wand and could wave it right now, and and all certificate of need in the con, so to speak, that would be my dream policy win.
In the con, man, I love that. Somebody hashtag that right now out in the audience as you're watching. Let's move to Tori Venable, State Director of Americans for Prosperity Tennessee. Go ahead and give a quick introduction again. Everybody knows you, but what's your bill? What would you change?
Tori Venable, Americans for Prosperity, State Director. Been with us since we started back in 2013. And my my biggest pet peeve is civil asset forfeiture. So I would have to say ending civil asset forfeiture, because it's legalized theft. And we have to end this practice and appropriately fund our law enforcement through transparent budget processes.
Speaking of ending civil asset forfeiture, Mickey Shelton, who I will introduce next here. If you're watching on Facebook, though, you'll see in the comments section over here, or maybe even the description of this video, there's a link to an Evernote link. It's a bunch of notes that we all put together for this program. You could follow right along with every single topic we're covering tonight, all the state bills we're going through. And at the top of that Evernote link, there are clicks to petitions that you all can sign. Civil asset forfeiture is one of them. It will send a message directly to these committee members, letting you know how you feel about civil asset forfeiture to end that practice. Now, criminal forfeiture, by all means, if you commit a crime, you convicted that crime, take that property. But civil forfeiture has constitutional problems. Mickey, going on to you, buddy. Introduce yourself to our audience. New guy out in the Tri-Cities area. What's one thing you would like to stop or see change?
Again, my name is Mickey. I'm the Grassroots Engagement Director out of Johnson City in the Tri-Cities area. And I'm actually going to do a little bit of a different thing here. if I had a magic wand, I would actually stop HR1 from being passed because it's the very fabrication of how our election laws are made and operate, and it changes the whole entire country and states' election laws. So if I had a magic wand, I would change that.
Man, HR1 is a huge one. It absolutely is. It would be something that would dynamically affect the way that not just elections are run, but several other things. Moving on to East Tennessee, Knoxville area, David Thompson, buddy, putting him on the spot. I'm going to vamp here just a little bit so he's got time to turn his camera on if he wants to. David Thompson, though, out in the East Tennessee area. Introduce yourself. Tell him how you doing. And I don't know, if you want to change something, you can. Where are you looking at? That's what I'm talking about, man. Just full repeal the 16th is what we're talking about. So, yeah. Telling you, man. Get rid of the 16th. Maybe even look at getting rid of the 17th. That's a little bit too much. We'll step back from that for a second. You will step back from a second. Let's move on to the stories at hand, though. Starting with a little federal story. Let's begin right here. Topic from the Hill. Here's the headline you're looking at right now. The PRO Act. Yes, this is still moving, by the way, everyone. The PRO Act did pass the House last week or maybe the week before. It all runs together now, but it's moving up in the Senate. Here's the headline from the Hill. The PRO Act nationalizes the worst of California's policies. I think this is an interesting take on a federal issue that we've been looking at recently, but it nationalizes the worst of California's policies. Bringing you right home here to Tennessee, let's read along with me. During a public health and economic crisis, the last thing Congress should be doing is passing laws that hit the brakes on our recovery, kill jobs, and hurt small businesses. Unfortunately, House Democrats did exactly that last week by passing the PRO Act, nationalizing the policies that continue to drive workers and businesses out of my home state of California. This is coming from, Representative Young Kim there. What do they mean by that? AB5. AB5 is the California bill that she's bringing up. AB5 redefined, and this is important to focus on right here. I feel like we've spoken about the PRO Act a couple times over the last couple of weeks, and we're about to speak about what that means towards right to work law. But before we get to that, though, importantly, AB5, which is modeling the national legislation here, redefines what an independent contractor is, making it harder and in some cases impossible for workers to drive for Uber in their free time, perform in their local orchestra, or do freelance work. Upon AB5 going into effect, gig companies like Uber and Lyft began making plans to stop doing business in California altogether, putting into jeopardy a major source of income for workers. This caused a push from industries across the state to get relief from misguided law. The result? Listen to this. This is a result of AB5. Now the national version is called the PRO Act. This is a result from AB5 that I did not expect, but should be logical to everyone. The result, AB5 has helped special interests and those lucky enough to gain favor of those holding in power in Sacramento while hurting those trying to make a living. Businesses who could afford lobbyists receive exemptions, while our small businesses, newspapers, artists, yoga instructors, financial advisors, Uber and Lyft drivers, artists, and others were all left holding the bag. Kind of sets up a weird class tier system here that I really wanted to stress before we get on to what that means for right to work state as well. And Tori or James, either one of y'all want to pick this up here. Now that we have a quick look at independent contracting version, we've thrown out this term right to work quite a bit here on this program. And I think people have heard this a little bit over the last couple of weeks. Whoever wants to take this up, could you just give a quick rundown as to what right to work is, what that means?
It's pretty simple. Tennessee's a right to work state and has been a right to work state. And it means that an employer cannot compel you to join a union or fire you for not joining a union. They also cannot fire you if you are part of it because you want to join a union. So it's really about worker freedom, and that the employees have the ability to decide whether or not they A, want to join a union, and B, if they want to pay dues. So even if, say, you work at, say you're a teacher, you don't have to be part of the teachers union. It's your choice whether or not you are part of the teachers union. And so that is really a foundational thing, because otherwise it would force people, even those who did not want to be part of it or who did not support the same political ideologies and policies that the unions often support, with their dues, it would force them to pay dues even if they did not want to be a member, if we were not a right to work state. So that's what it is. It helps keep our unemployment numbers low because people are not having to jump through additional hoops or have additional barriers to employment.
And I don't want to stress this real quick, Tori, or James, if you want to jump in and help me clarify, even for my own sake. So when we say right to work, we have no problem at all with, say, association, right? Like no problem with unionization itself. We just have a problem with the coercion of it, with the requirement to become a part of a union in order to be employed by companies. That distinction correct there? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we should point out that we're not against unions, and people who associate to try to become the best craftsmen or whatever they if that's the purpose, that's a really good high aim, and they should do that. But the idea that everyone should be forced into that position is, I don't know. It's not good for everybody. Not everybody needs to join a union. Some people can get hired by a local person who knows how to do electrical work or carpentry and be trained one-on-one with that person and be an apprentice. And that kind of thing has been going on for hundreds of years in those professions and should continue.
And, right to work protects those unionized employees as well. You're not going to get fired for joining a union either. So there's no blocking you either way, whether you want to or don't want to. It's the employers are staying out of it, whether or not someone is going to be part of a union. And the state, more importantly, the government is staying out of whether or not someone is compelled to be in a union.
And the reason why we're bringing this up about right to work, it's important to our state for obvious reasons, obvious philosophical and ideological reasons. But the PRO Act intends to outright ban right to work states across every single state in the United States, of which right now there are 27 states that are declared right to work states. And the Tennessee Senate just passed 2 weeks ago, last week, again, it's all running together for me, a right to work constitutional amendment last week that is now coming up in the House on March 24th of 2021. This is House Joint Resolution 72. And someone help me clarify here, either James or Tori, the importance behind making this a constitutional amendment as opposed to just sort of having it codified in some other way.
Well, here's the important thing. After both chambers pass this constitutional amendment, all the voters of Tennessee will have the opportunity to vote on this and make this actually an amendment to the Constitution. And the beauty of our country being a republic of 50 states is that each one of our states has the opportunity to make these kinds of decisions for itself. So, if California wants to go down the road that, they take these measures, they pass these laws that continue to destroy their economy, they're welcome to do so. However, here in Tennessee, it's been a well-established practice that we are a right-to-work state, and it's been the effort of many of the legislative members, and similarly, a lot of activists, myself included, who have advocated for our state to be a right-to-work state. This is an effort that's going to culminate in being a permanent part of our Constitution, our state Constitution. So it's important to recognize that states have rights, and this is basically an effort to make sure that Tennessee continues to be a right-to-work state.
Hey, let me show you how easy it is when you're tuning into Americans for Prosperity, a program like this, or if you find some of this floating around on social media, how easy it is to take action. When we say take action, I do mean legitimately get your opinion in front of legislators, okay? So this is going to look a little bit weird because you're seeing a Facebook inside of a Facebook screen, but the screen you're looking at right now, if you hover your mouse over this little Evernote link in the top right-hand corner, if you click on that, you will immediately open these Evernote links that we're all following through right now. These are literally the show notes that we all put together and go through. Right down here, federal issues, take action. See that? If you click on that link, it goes to an entire toolkit, everything you would need to throw things out on social media, to sign here and email the lawmakers. You can literally tweet directly at the lawmakers. These messages are already made for you ahead of time. You literally just have to hit submit, gives you some talking points, anything that you would need there to make it make sense for you and immediately take action.
Hey, Grant, do you mind if I say one more thing about, you just brushed over about the independent contractor part, and I don't know if this is in the PRO Act, but I do know it was in that AB 5. out in California. And I'll take that representative from California's word on it that they're trying to pass something similar with the PRO Act. There were all of these, I hate to put people in categories, I really do, but what people would consider liberal writers out in California who were all for AB5. Like, and these are gig writers, people who write, you know, like 5 to 10 stories for like 6 different news outlets. They were all for this because it gave a certain provision that if you worked so many hours for a company, they had to provide you health insurance. And when the bill passed, they all just got fired. All of them, like almost all of them got fired and had to either move to other states or find a different line of work because you couldn't just be an independent contractor employee for CNN, NPR, whatever, all those different people who lived in Silicon Valley, lived in the LA area, and even things that aren't political, you know, mommy bloggers, sports bloggers. I mean, imagine how many entertainment and sports bloggers there are in LA where they don't actually work for the company. They get paid by the story, okay? And then all those writers tried to get AB5 repealed, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
And it's like there's this bill touches so many parts of everybody's life because it's about how you make money, which affects, I mean, that can be a cascading effect that can put barriers in your life that can take you decades to crawl out of. So I just wanted to throw that out there about the independent contracting part. I don't know if that's in the PRO Act, but I bet there's stuff like that. Stuff that sounds really good on the front end where, you know, like, oh, I'm going to get health insurance or I'm going to get benefits, or they might just fire you because they don't think you're worth it. You were only worth it as an independent contractor. That worked for you. It worked for the employer. So you kind of brushed over that, and I just wanted to, like, make sure people know how real this is, because in Tennessee, I know there's a lot of people who make up their income from multiple gig type jobs, not just, especially since the crash in 2008. A lot of millennials, that's how they make their money. They don't have a full-time employer with a 401k and all that stuff. They have 6 different part-time jobs.
It does actually take I think it's called an A/B test. So it decides if someone's an employee or an independent contractor based off of a lot of the AB5 language. And that's what's really concerning, is because these are the same folks that would be independent contractors that are these gig workers. And, you know, you're exactly on point, David. They're selling you a bill of goods, and they're not telling you what it's actually going to cost, which for many people, it's their livelihoods, their work.
And if you're watching on, sorry, go ahead, James.
I was just going to mention, you know, there were a lot of folks during the pandemic when they were determined to be non-essential workers that they had to turn to independent contracting, gig type employment in order to, like we've all been describing, making ends meet, you know, during tough times. So just imagine if this had already been applied.
James, what you just said, I think, is a perfect transition into what we're going to talk about next. Before I do, if you have a comment of your own, if you want us to let us know where you're coming from, if you have a different thought of ours, especially even if you have a different thought than ours, put that in the comment section right now. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, wherever you may be watching, we have a comment section that streams all that together. Our boy David can get it to us where we can see it here. I'd love to respond to you, help you drive this commentary for us. James, what you just said, though, during these downtimes and where everybody has already been struggling, right? We've already been trying to figure out ways to make ends meet. And one of those things that really does not help an individual make ends meet is raising their property taxes. I think we just got done dealing with a situation like that here in Nashville. Now, those in Middle Tennessee know exactly what I'm about to talk about here. You know, the metro area here in Nashville. Look, admittedly so, Mayor Cooper inherited a very terrible situation when he got in here. And he also had to deal with some terrible tragedy of a tornado coupled with the coronavirus coming on. In the midst of all that, however, they also decided to, say, increase property taxes by 37% at a time, I think, when people were least able to afford it. Some of the anecdotes that came out of this story, I mean, I'm talking small business owners sobbing in front of me while they're telling these stories. Some of those anecdotes were a little bit too much to deal with sometimes. And it really rocked me to my core. So I think this inspired, Tori, I'm going to give most of the credit here to you. It inspired Tori to really go down this path of trying to figure out what can we do with this at a level possibly higher than just cities. If you want to tell them about House Bill 1315, the Truth in Taxation Bill, where we are with that, what it intends to do. Go ahead, Tori.
Well, before I jump in on that, like, I want to make sure that Grant, you received the credit. So many of you know and have been engaged with us when we worked on the Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act. And really, it was we were gathering signatures. What did we end up gathering? 27,000 signatures to roll back the property tax hike. It did a few other things that would have limited cronyism and government spending, and we thought it was a great idea. And so we got the signatures, we turned the signatures in, and then Metro sued the taxpayers to keep it from going to court because they did not want the people to have a vote on rolling back this massive tax hike. So that's what sent me down the road. But Grant, to your credit, Grant led the efforts here in Nashville. Over 50 volunteers, worked with him to gather these signatures. And it's a shame that it didn't work out the way we wanted it to through the court process. I know that, our friends they still have another petition drive, and they're coming very close to they have another, Grant, do you know the website?
I do not know. I should have looked up, but I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Was it no tax for?
It was forgoodgovernment.com. I'm looking to see if it's still there. Yeah, it's still active. Yeah.
forgoodgovernment.com. They actually have the petition available, but there's only a couple of days to turn it back in.
March 25th is their deadline. Yeah.
Right. That petition's a little different than the one we engaged in, but they're still looking to try and roll back the tax. But we started looking at what can we do to prevent this from happening again? What can we do to protect Tennesseans from a massive tax increase in the future? And so I started looking around at policies, and I found Utah has a policy called Truth in Taxation. And it's a really simple, transparent government idea. Basically, when the local governments want to raise people's property taxes, so that's county, city, town, et cetera, when they want to raise people's property taxes, they have to send out a notice to all of the property owners in that taxing subdivision, wherever the area is, right? They have to send them a postcard at least 10 days before the final vote when they're going to approve a tax increase. They have to let those individuals know how much their individual taxes are going to go up, the percentage their individual taxes are going to go up, how much of the budget that they are trying to make up with raising the taxes. And these are all key pieces of information for, a taxpayer to make up their mind whether or not it's a valid tax increase and to decide to go have their voice heard at City Hall. So they also have to make sure that everyone that shows up has an adequate amount of time to speak for or against the tax increase. And, I think we can all be realists here and understand what the political outcomes are going to be. If there's a 34% property tax hike and half the city shows up to tell them, no, we can't afford a 34% property tax hike at this time, and they do it anyways, right, there will be a political reckoning for that. And so while it's not the same thing as a referendum, at least it gives the people a voice that they were denied in Nashville most recently. So truth in taxation, what it is simply, it'll trigger that, especially in these areas where they have a high debt ratio. So that would be 10% or higher. Of course, guess who fits into that category? Looking at you, Nashville. There's a few other places in the state that fit that description as well. But we think this is a great truth in taxation is a great transparency issue. It's a great issue to keep the voters having their voices heard. And it's a good way to connect people with the most local government that really affects their day-to-day lives. So we'd love to see this roll out statewide. We're going to be in the first committee, the Property and Planning Subcommittee, on Tuesday. State Representative Brandon Ogles is our bill sponsor on the House side. And, I would highly encourage folks, especially if you just got hit with that massive property tax hike, whether you're in Nashville or somewhere else, to call your legislators and tell them you support this bill.
Yeah, and again, House Bill 1315, House Bill 1315. Importantly, look, it's linked in the show notes. Mickey just threw it in the comment section on Facebook, YouTube. You can find it over there as well. Importantly, though, if you do follow that link, just understand the language that you are looking at, either in the summary description or in the actual bill language itself, that will change substantially over the next couple of days here, right? I mean, Tori's been working overtime with key stakeholders to get this language correct. And I cannot stress, I'm struggling to find the words here, Tori, literally to stress how big of a deal this will be when it passes, right? How much of a monumental change just the awareness alone will do to an effort like this. And maybe just to put it this way, Tori, if you could tell us anecdotally, you told me the other day about a story out where you live of them proposing to or actually doing a property tax increase of 100%, and then what happened in the election season afterwards. Could you tell them that story?
quite some years ago, in the city of Laverne, where I live, they did a 100% property tax hike. And, we actually had Ben Cunningham, who was with the Nashville Tea Party. He showed up, and there was like a group of concerned citizens that just kind of organized together, and we all stood up and we all spoke against it. And we were all very upset with our local government officials. And then they, of course, passed the tax increase anyways. And then the next election cycle, we kicked every single one of them out of office.
That's what I like to hear.
And now Laverne is like Beacon. They actually just won an award for Beacon from the Beacon Center for being the freest city in the state of Tennessee. So I think we did right by the taxpayers here.
And I don't want to belabor this point too much, but James, if I can kick to you, buddy, real quick, just because I want you to tell them the story about like the difference between escrowing and actually paying it up, so you can actually see it, right? Because that makes an impact as to what we're talking about of just simply seeing it in your mailbox, why that matters.
This is a much bigger deal than people can possibly imagine. I'm going to step back just a little bit and just impress upon people why this is so important. I know it's only going to affect 5 or 6 areas, I think 4 or 5 counties in one city with the way the bill of language is set up right now. But, and ideally we would love to see this be something applied statewide, but, we'll take small steps. Certainly you two described some very egregious tax increases in the state of Tennessee. Most recently in Nashville, Tori relates the story about what happened in her area. And certainly people are aware when there is something big like that. But too often, these tax increases get passed with very few people even being aware that it happens. And there's an important reason why is because when you're paying your mortgage every month, I'm a homeowner, I'm Tori's a homeowner, anybody else on here who's ever bought a home, there's a part of the process when you're purchasing a home, if you're financing that home, you have to purchase or not purchase, I should say, you're going to pay into your escrow account. And what that does is it secures a year in advance all the money that you're going to need to pay your taxes and your insurance when those come due later in the year. So, again, you're paying that 1 year in advance. So when they pass these smaller tax increases, many homeowners they're not even aware of how it impacts them financially until it's too late for them to do anything about it. When you're paying into your escrow, you don't know where that money is going necessarily. You'll get this notification from your mortgage company that says, hey, we see that there's a shortfall in your escrow for the coming year. You're going to need to pay another $50 or $60, $100 a month. In some cases, some of these business owners, they'll see huge increases. In comparison to a regular home mortgage. But regardless, you'll get these incremental increases in your mortgage statement from your mortgage company, and most people don't even know why. Their natural suspicion is that it's their homeowner's insurance, and that's usually the thing that they go to first, because you can just call your insurance company or maybe bid it at, find another company that'll give you a better rate. But most people don't even recognize that it's more often than not that their property taxes went up. And again, like I said earlier, by the time you're aware of it, it's too late. There's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. So what makes this bill so great? And again, I know it only affects a handful of areas.
It only affects a handful of areas now.
Right.
We would really love to see this statewide. We think a lot of locals will pick it up, and there is still very much a possibility it could get expanded.
But the great thing is for those particular areas, those people will know in advance, and not just a handful of people will be made aware. It's every single person who owns property in that jurisdiction, whether it's within the county or within the city, municipal government, whatever it is, every taxpayer will know the full impact of what that tax increase will mean to their pocketbook.
Again, we're talking about House Bill 1315. That's House Bill 1315. It's going to make a massive difference. Notice alone, awareness alone, education is half the battle, as they always say. Educate people as to when their property taxes are proposal of being increased, have a public hearing, vote after that public hearing, hold these public officials accountable in a public forum. I love the way it does it, right? It's very, very simple idea, yet so impactful. Moving on to something that I think would also be equally impactful. I brought that up just a second ago, by the way, you saw on your screen to let you know that will be up, House Bill 1315 in Property Planning Subcommittee, March 23rd. I believe that next Tuesday. Don't quote me on that. Look it up for yourself. Let's move on here. Say it again, sorry.
Tuesday at 4:30 p.m.
Tuesday at 4:30. There you go. Moving on to another piece here, Tori, and this may be one of the bills, the last bill, state bills that we dive deep into. Maybe just give some quick recaps on the way out. But this bill in particular, we've sort of been teasing this over the last couple of weeks, dealing specifically with education. House Bill 1305. That's 1305. Intra-district open enrollment. Could you explain what that is, real quick?
Open enrollment is essentially public school choice, right? So many of these districts have their own open enrollment policies, and these are called zone exemptions or transfers, and they all have a hodgepodge across the state of when you can transfer, how you can transfer, what you can, who's allowed to transfer. It's a mess. And parents, especially as schools have been closed down, have seen the value in being able to take their child to an in-person school, or even just having that small ability to choose. Because, there's a variety of reasons. Maybe you want your child to go to a school that's got a specific STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Is that it?
Got it.
Thanks. Or particular, they want advanced AP classes or college technical CTE classes. Like there's a bunch of different special classes that you can get at different public schools across the state. And then there's, any other number of reasons, convenience, or maybe that child's bullied. I mean, there's any reason why a parent would want their child to go to a different school. So what this does is all of the schools will on their district website put 14 days in advance of the open enrollment time period before the beginning of the school year, the number of open seats they have by program, grade level, etc. So a parent can go onto the website for their school district. They can see where the open seats are at. And if they want to put their child in a different school, now it would be the same district because, you've got county schools. Sometimes you have special school districts. So it's still within the same district. And the reason it's intra-district or it's within the same school district is because it's the same bucket of money. Because if you start expanding out past the school district, then you get into the school funding formula and moving money around. And it is, quite frankly, it's a huge mess. It needs to be fixed. But we can at least start from where we're at. So streamlines that process for parents. You can see where the open seats are at. You've got 14 days that you can see where the open seats are at. 30 days, they have to leave a 30-day window for open enrollment. And they can't block you as long as your child's otherwise qualified to go to a different school. They can't block someone into, say, the one failing school in the district, which we've seen happen, which is like the worst possible scenario, right? That they would grant anyone else open enrollment, but if a parent wanted their child out of the one failing school in the district, they would not grant anyone to leave the failing school, which is, it's just appalling that the public school system can even be used in that way to begin with. So this will correct that issue immediately. Parents will be able to transfer, and then it's only the number of available seats. So if more people want to transfer, then there are seats available, then there's a lottery for the additional seats that are left over. But the beauty of this is once you have transferred your child to, a school one city over or whatnot, the parent is still responsible for transportation, but they are enrolled in that school. So you don't have to go through this process over and over again and hope you get the winning lottery ticket to get your kid into a better school. Once you're in, and that's it. And so we think this is a great way to expand some educational freedom within the public school districts. Once open enrollment within the school district, some districts allow kids to transfer from outside of the districts. That's still going to be okay. They just have to open it up to students within the district first.
And again, Tori, you just touched on this a second ago. I just want to stress this one aspect here. There are several areas that are currently doing this right now, right? I mean, we're just making this available statewide. Is that how it goes?
So there are open enrollment policies across the state. It's just they have different windows. They have different time frames. Parents don't know what their options are. Parents don't know where the open seats are. It's very hard for parents to know if
it really is
where you would want to send them.
I know Tori has personally dealt with this, but I just want to relate, in my own school district, it was recently published in our local newspaper. I wish I had a link to that article so you could just kind of see how convoluted it is. And when we say it's a hodgepodge, it can really be very confusing. Many of the school districts, mine included, have had these policies in place. It is their own internal policy and they get to determine what that looks like. That's all well and good. But in my own county, for our county schools, I know they published a list of which schools would have available seats. And it was very formulaic. It was 25 seats in this school. It was exactly 50 seats in this other school. And it wasn't so much that anybody within the county, some of those schools did allow any comer to apply for that, one of those 25, and it was always 25 or 50 seats. Let me point that out one more time. So it's very unusual that it is such a specific number. But more importantly, many of those schools only would allow a transfer from another specific school. So it wasn't as if anybody from within the school district could apply for every open seat that was out there. It was a hodgepodge, to be kind in how we're going to describe that. And if I had a child that was going to attend a particular school, I wouldn't know if, first of all, I'm even eligible. There's not enough information. It was put in the newspaper, but it was published about 2 months ago for next year. So that's great notice, but I may not necessarily be thinking about it at this time. When am I going to enroll my child in a particular school come August?
To be respectful of everyone's time tonight, by the way, thank you everyone for joining us. We do this for y'all. I hope y'all are enjoying it. If you have any comments at all about what we can improve on, what you'd like us to focus on, what you'd like to see better, if you want to hear less of me and more from the people that actually know stuff like Tori and James, all of those comments are valid. Let us know for sure. Let's do a lightning round. First time we're trying this. This is complete improv right now. Nobody knew we were doing this. Let's end the program with a little bit of lightning round, just going over a couple bills to keep your eyes on. And I want to end this with just a couple healthcare bills, see if I can get James to fill us in on some of that. Civil asset forfeiture related things, okay? The bond bill, $350 bond you have to pay for the opportunity to get your stuff back in court. Just the opportunity to show up in court. That's still moving along. Look for that to be moving along in the Senate coming up here as well. Chairman Lafferty has a bill. We call it the reporting bill. It would basically give us information on how often a civil forfeiture means they take your property, the state takes your property, how often that actually ends in a criminal conviction. That will be coming up in Civil Justice Subcommittee next week, moving in the Senate very soon to follow after that as well. Some other ones to keep your eyes on that'll be moving either in the House side or the Senate side. Expungement for the legally innocent. This is an individual who's been not guilty, dismissed charges, legally innocent individuals, streamlining that expungement process. We also have something that's just a bill dealing with a multitude of policing practices. This is House Bill 1406, and this, let's see here, Senate Bill 1380. This bill intends to fully incorporate policing practices that are already happening right now in Tennessee, codify them into law so that we can lead the way as a state to demonstrate to other states how proper policing should be done, what being smart on crime and soft on taxpayers looks like. This is an amendment that was brought by law enforcement officers. It does things like require duty to intervene if an officer is using excessive force. It requires de-escalation training. It gets rid of strangulation holds while still keeping a blood choke hold. It makes it so magistrate judges can no longer issue no-knock warrants. Things that are already taking place that we codify into law as a signal to everyone else we are doing police properly. You've already heard about some of the education things coming up. We just discussed about truth in taxation. Keep your eye on that. That's still moving as well. Now, let's end here a little bit, James, if we could, with some of these healthcare bills. Surprise medical billing is one that's near and dear to me from a personal anecdote coming from my father. He got a bill that he didn't expect, way out of proportion, had to whittle that back down, and maybe some other stuff going on that it deals with on a separate side. But if you want to touch on that real quick, James, or a 30-second elevator pitch for certificate of need. It's a massive issue. We don't have time to get into it right now, but that bill will be moving soon. And I just want to give a little taste or a teaser for some people watching right now to get them acclimated with a conversation that might be more in depth next week, Well,
let me just touch on the thing that people are probably more familiar with than certificate of need. And just like you have dealt with it in your family, I just recently got hit with a surprise medical bill from, it wasn't a huge surprise, but my wife had to be transferred or transported from our where we were having our baby in a birthing center over to Vanderbilt Medical Center because things weren't going the way that we had planned. So, she had to be transported by an ambulance, wasn't necessarily anticipating that bill. And of course, we got charged as if we were not in network since we didn't have insurance being used for that initially. Regardless of the point, regardless of the details, the point is, people oftentimes get hit with these unexpected medical bills whenever they have an emergency, and most Americans are not prepared for it. There was a provision in the coronavirus relief package at the end of last year that would have stopped this at a federal level. Certainly, we would like to see this, put into the Tennessee code to eliminate surprise medical billing. And what that allows for is, rather than being hit with these exorbitant fees or charges, medical charges, because you have a provider that's not necessarily in your network, or you may not have insurance for a particular type of service. What this does is it negotiates those bills, at least at a minimum, to your in-network charges, which you would have paid had this been through your insurance company, had you known that this was coming about. So that's something that I think many people have dealt with in some way, shape, or form. Because things happen. Your child breaks their leg on the football field. So those kinds of emergencies occur, and and especially these difficult times, just it makes it a little bit easier on people if those charges don't come at such a high level.
It gives them a path to dispute the charges. It doesn't just make them go away or make them in network.
No, it certainly doesn't.
Either, but it gives like a path for them to reconcile between, you get an $11,000 bill and it was supposed to be a $2,000 bill. Well, then there's like a panel that gets together and says, okay, well, what's an actual reasonable amount in between?
Honestly, Tori, I had a choice when my wife was in the middle of labor, whether or not they would call. They asked me, can we call an ambulance? Or I mean, it would have been unreasonable for me to put my wife. Even though it was, it's literally half a mile away from where the baby was being birthed at the birthing center to Vanderbilt. So, it was well worth, getting the ambulance there. Now, do I think it's worth what they want to charge me? No, I'd rather pay in network.
Could have got a limo.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a very valid point. Certainly these providers need to be paid what's due them. Let's make sure that it is reasonable. And if a reasonable person had the opportunity to choose an in-network provider, they probably would have. So let's make sure that people are negotiating at a better rate. So I think people can identify with that particular legislation more so than maybe certificate of need, which is basically certificate of need is a government permission slip for a number of these medical providers to be able to provide specific services. And there's about 24 or so different certificates of need in the state of Tennessee. We're actually one of the states that have the most certificates of need requirements. So, in the past year or so, I'm trying to remember when, President Trump actually had sent out a statement to the states asking them to eliminate certificate of need.
That was 2019.
Was it 2019?
No, it was. I think it was like the end of 2019, because I remember sharing it with legislators in 2020 as we were working on certificate of need then.
Right, and it was
like how this whole thing started was they thought it was going to lower costs and increase access back in the 70s, and they actually tied federal funding to it. And then they found out very quickly it did neither of those things. They got rid of the federal funding that was attached to it. And here we are all these years later, and we still have certificate of need laws, and they don't do what they're supposed to do. So,
well, and good point is a lot of that work was being done well in advance of the coronavirus pandemic. But one of the things that the pandemic helped us recognize is that these certificates of need are very onerous and prevented a lot of people from being able to receive proper care during these emergency situations, because we couldn't quickly stand up the types of facilities that are necessary to treat people under these circumstances. So, through an executive order, our governor was able to eliminate certificates of need, as well as a number of other things, occupational licensing requirements, a lot of things that had been barriers to people getting access to quality healthcare were eliminated during the pandemic. And if it was good enough then, and we were certainly working on these things long before then, it is absolutely a wise decision to get these policies passed now.
I completely agree with you. That's how I've been talking to several of my friends and family about it. It's like if circumstance alone shows us the necessity of some of these things, or at least how easily we can implement them and how well they work once implemented, why not just side with logic every time? Why not just continue to do this? On the way out of this program here, as our boy David Thompson is either queuing up the exit stuff, the outro stuff, or the music, I will insert a pregnant pause as we do in these programs to see anybody have any other final last words. Tori, James, Mickey, anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to draw attention to? Mickey, if you want to give one final pitch for people to sign up for the GLA stuff coming up tomorrow. Mickey is hosting a fantastic grassroots level 1 course coming up Friday and Saturday this week. Go ahead and let them know about that on the way out here, buddy.
Yeah, so if you're in the Johnson City area or just in East Tennessee in general, we are hosting a grassroots leadership academy training. It's level 1. So if you are kind of distraught over the past election, you're wanting to know what to do now as a conservative, we give you the tools to be able to know how to do that. So please come join us. We got free food and we got some great classes to teach you guys. So if you want any more information on that, I will post a link here in the comment section. Also, you can reach me at mshelton@afphq.org. Again, that's mshelton@afphq.org.
There you go. I'm looking forward to that. I know everyone else in the state will be looking forward to it that attends as well. My name is Grant Henry. For Tori Venable, James Amundsen, Mickey Shelton, and David Thompson, we are signing off tonight. We love each and every one of y'all sincerely. Hopefully see and hear from y'all soon.